Hey everyone, I'm your host Brett, and welcome to another episode of Wallet Wisdom, a podcast presented by LMCU. On today's podcast, I'm excited to have back Savannah Girmscheid, LMCU's Financial Wellness Manager, to share how we can get off on the right foot financially this new year. Savannah, again, thank you so much for joining us on the Wallet Wisdom podcast. We are super excited to have you back on again. It's always fun to have reoccurring guests. That means that you passed the test originally. So welcome to the show.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on today.
Absolutely. Well, and for listeners, if you haven't had a chance to hear our last episode where Savannah was on, it's just a really great episode to help people understand about all the different financial tools and ways to continue to educate yourself and learn about how your finances can go even farther and ways that we can budget and all that kind of stuff. And so we thought, why not kick off 2026 with a time of the year where I think a lot of us are kind of reevaluating. Maybe we spent a little bit too much over the holidays, or we're kind of reevaluating, the costs of living and things that do come up every year. And so, this is that time of the season where you're evaluating and thinking, gosh, what do I want to accomplish, right? And we thought, when we're talking about financial goals, Savannah, you've shared with me and several others just some of the incredible assessments that exist that you can really get a snapshot into maybe what you're trying to accomplish with your finances, how you can maybe set yourself up even better for this year. So, thinking about that, when people want to start the year with those financial goals, but maybe not sure where to begin, what is kind of the easiest way to figure out or, kind of focus in on those things?
Yeah. So if you're anything like me, there's multiple areas of your finances that you probably are thinking of setting a goal in potentially. And the real key in goal setting is to make it achievable, attainable. You don't want to set a goal or too many goals and become discouraged when you're just not able to achieve all of them. We all have big aspirations. And so making a manageable, achievable goal is just really important. And I think when we're thinking of our finances, it can be really helpful to identify specific areas first that you want to tackle and set just one goal, maybe two tops, but one at a time to kind of achieve and build momentum.
Yeah. I for myself, even, I like to pick on myself a little bit because I'm definitely still not the most financially savvy person. But every episode, I always learn a little something new and I get a little bit better. But, I think that's probably been part of my pitfalls is I have either had too many goals that I'm trying to accomplish, or I've set something almost way too unobtainable. And then what ends up happening is throughout the year, I just keep failing. And then I get discouraged. And then I'm like, forget this. What's the point? So, LMCU has a financial wellness assessment. And that is, again, for members and non-members, correct?
Yeah. It's totally free to utilize any of our tools in the LMCU Financial Wellness Center. You can create a login and then you can track your progress and be able to more easily get to different articles and different tools that you've used in the past and revisit those. But you can also just go in and access a lot of those tools without that free account.
I love that. And again, this is just another example of how I think we really do strive to meet people where they're at, whether that's being a member with us or you're just still learning about finances or not sure if, LMCU is a place where you could see your finances at. It doesn't matter. We want to offer this to everyone because, again, these are important aspects to any successful financial, health of yourself, if you will. So I guess some questions that I have too is, how does this assessment help those identify their strengths and areas that they maybe need to, pay more attention to with their finances?
Yeah, so that financial wellness assessment is just one of the many tools on our Financial Wellness Center. And it's a really, really quick way to identify where you're at in each area of your finances. So this assessment actually breaks down your and gives you a numerical score for each of the four areas of financial health or financial wellness. So those areas are spend, save, borrow, and plan. And so by taking this really quick assessment, it takes less than 3 minutes to take. It's honestly super quick, super easy, and it will generate a numerical score for each of those four areas. So, what I love about that is you're able to really quickly at a glance see, okay, where am I at holistically? And be able to pick out, okay, maybe my borrow score is really high. Let's celebrate that. Maybe I have a high credit score that's leading to that. Maybe I've been
Yeah.
really intentional about not getting into an unmanageable amount of debt. So celebrate that win, whatever area is highest. That's something that's worth celebrating.
Yeah.
But then also, it's really helpful to be able to see what area or areas are low, and that can help you identify the first goal that you might want to set for yourself. So, let's say your area of spending is that lowest area. You can set a goal in any area of spending that's going to help you in in that area that you do need to grow in.
I love that you're calling out, like, celebrate those big scores, because that's a great accomplishment as well. So as that breaks down into those areas, can you kind of help us kind of just walk us through what maybe those four scores kind of represent, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. If you are not in the car right now or multitasking in some other way, if you have time to take the financial health assessment right now, the financial wellness assessment, it could be really helpful to have full context of all those questions that you'll go through. I'll point out a couple, but if you do have time to pause this episode and take it real quick, it could provide some helpful context for the rest of our conversation. So
Yeah.
essentially, those four areas we've got spend. So things like, are your expenses lower than your income? Are you
Mhm.
able to pay all of your bills on time? There's questions surrounding those areas that all make up that area of your score or your
Sure.
spend score as a whole. Then we've got savings. And so topics like emergency savings and do you have automatic transfers set up? Those are big components of that saving area as well. Are you saving up for different financial goals? Are you on track for those? So then we've got borrowing, and that's all really a reflection of your credit score. So have you shown that you are a responsible borrower and have the credit score to reflect that? And then are you in a manageable amount of debt? And that's going to totally vary depending on the person. So it's more about your kind of individual situation and individual perception than like, okay, do you have X number of dollars that you
Sure.
need to pay back? So it's really more about what's comfortable for you and are you at a place where you are healthy in that area?
For
And
sure.
then for that plan area, this one's kind of interesting because insurance is actually a component of this. So, do
Oh,
you have the proper insurance set up to protect your assets, to protect what you've worked for? So, that's a piece of it. Also, do you have a retirement savings account? So, do you have a 401k or an IRA set up? And are you funding that? So, all of those fall within that category as well.
that's really cool. And I got to say, I like that it's broken up, right, into like four different scores rather than like one big number. And then you're like, well, what does that mean? Knowing kind of these categories, if you will, and where you rank on them, I think it gives. I'm just thinking for myself, but for those listening too, it kind of just gives you an idea of where I need to maybe spend more of my focus rather
Exactly.
than just saying, oh, my this big number is still smaller than I'd like, but I don't know what's going to impact that, if you will. So having those broken down seemed like a really smart kind of approach.
Yeah, and it's a perfect tool to use as a springboard to set a goal.
Absolutely. So now I want to transition a little into those scores. So when someone gets their results, what should they focus on first? There's going to be probably several different scores for each category. So how can our listeners kind of navigate those results?
Yeah, so my biggest suggestion would just be to take that lowest score and set a financial goal around it. And you may look at all of your scores and be like, "Hey, I really want to." I know for me, my first goal in 2026 is to um, have a fully funded emergency fund. I
Yeah.
took a couple of hits to my emergency fund with unexpected expenses this year. And so I really want to prioritize rebuilding that to my 3 months of living expenses in 2026. So that score of save was actually the lowest for me because I didn't have that fully funded emergency fund. And so I set a goal around that area. I also wanted to work on paying off my car a little bit early, which is in that borrow category. But again, I chose my lowest area to focus on first. So likely, I will still be able to work towards both of those goals in 2026. My goal for that emergency fund is to have that replenished by the 1st of July. And if I'm able to stick to that 6 month timeline, then I can move on to my next goal. But I think just being able to quickly identify, okay, yes, there's a whole lot of competing priorities. There are many things I'd like to do, but being able to take that lowest score and say, hey, this is first priority, narrow down on that is really valuable. So
Yeah.
like I said, that was the area. That was my lowest score. And so I just chose one aspect of that, and that was the emergency fund. But you might have a low score in spending, and maybe
Hmm.
that means that one of the questions that factors into that score is, are you able to pay all of your bills on time? And
Right.
another question is, how often does your account balance drop below zero? So that might be something that if you're constantly finding that you're hit with a lot of overdraft fees because you're not monitoring that balance, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
you have auto pay set up for your bills, but they're not always getting paid on time because you haven't been monitoring that balance, that's something that you can set a reminder on your phone, maybe for every month or every week, or not month, that would be way too high. Every day or every week, maybe
Right.
you're setting that reminder just to check in on your balance and make sure that you have a little bit of a buffer in there, as well as enough to cover any recurring expenses that are being deducted. So that's just a couple examples of kind of setting those goals based on those
Yeah.
areas. But as you take the assessment, you'll see what questions all factor into each of those areas and be able to use those as springboards to figure out what's right for you.
And what I love about that kind of example too is that it's not always just a financial goal of like saving X amount or spending X amount less. It could very well be even just the goal of saying, hey, I'm going to set a reminder text so that I'm more involved in checking my finances. Even that itself is still a tangible goal. But I also want to go back to, you're kind of really painting that picture from the start of how it's important to set realistic goals. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be even a whole year goal. To your point, your immediate goal is to, yes, I want to, rebuild that emergency fund, but I want to do it by July 1st, right? Or the end of July, whatever that, time frame is. So it's like I want to spend a half a year attacking this one goal so that then if I have the ability to, if I meet that goal, I can then start trickling into another goal if I want, But at the same time, if something happens, life happens, right?
Yeah,
Who's to
absolutely.
say that April or May, something comes along where it kind of unfortunately doesn't work to be done by July? At least you still are able to keep working towards that. And so I
Yeah.
like that a lot. I think that's really smart.
That goal, that aspiration is wonderful, but I love what you brought up about needing to be flexible and not beat yourself up if the timeline does need to shift. I think as long as we're making meaningful steps towards achieving our goals, that's the biggest thing, and developing those healthy habits, that's going to just help us make huge progress even if we experience setbacks.
For sure. Well, and the way I kind of think about it too is like the whole point of especially a financial assessment like this is is not to make anybody feel bad about what scores they get, but the more we continue to have the knowledge and the information, that data, it allows us then to be better at choosing what action we're going to take, right? To then to try and solve for that. And so I think what we're talking about too is not just finding out information, but then actually practically putting it into action. And now, one of the things too, and we could have a whole episode just talking about what SMART goals are, not just that they're smart or non-smart goals, but for those that are listening, SMART goals is actually an acronym, SMART, which all kind of stand for a different thing. Some of you might be like, yeah, we know what a SMART goal is, Brett. But I guess how do those types of goals really help turn this goal, the score, into like maybe real progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time bound. So, just making sure that as you create a goal, you're keeping all of those factors in mind. And we talk a lot about how writing down a goal makes
Yeah.
you 42% more likely to actually achieve that goal. And so, being able to write down a goal that is specific,
Yeah.
measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time bound is just so valuable. And so, for example, with my emergency savings goal, what I had to do to create a goal that was realistic for me is I needed to look at, okay, what do I currently have in my emergency savings? I know it's not 3 months of living expenses. I had to look at that. That current balance. I also had to look at my living expenses for 3 months, had to figure out what's the gap there? How much do I need to
Right.
save? And then in looking at my income and my recurring expenses and my needs, I was able to figure out how much discretionary income do I have on a monthly basis and what's realistic based on spending habits in the past. What's realistic for me to set aside on a monthly basis? And do I have anything coming up in the next 6 months? Maybe a big vacation, or car repairs that I'm
Right.
anticipating? Do I have any of those things that might set me back a bit? So I really had to be intentional about looking at that full picture to figure out what is realistic for me. And based on that, I was able to identify, okay, that date of July 1st, if I'm able to set X dollars aside each month, I'm going to be able to have that fully funded emergency fund again. So I was able to have each of those elements as part of my goal. I was able to write that down, put it on my fridge. And my plan is that every month, by the last day of the month, I'll do a check in and I'll just see where am I at in progress towards that goal. Was I on track that month? How much was I able to set aside? And is that still realistic? Again, revisiting, being flexible. Did everything go according to plan, or do I need to adjust a habit, or maybe adjust that post if I did encounter a setback? So being intentional about making a realistic goal to begin with, but then also making a specific action plan to achieve that.
That's amazing. Also, the idea of you printing it, putting it on your refrigerator. I think for me, I'm a visual person. I could think about it all day long and come up with ideas and everything else. But to be fair, I will lose track over time if I don't have a visual reminder. And so I'm already thinking about how our listeners can stick to these goals, because I'm probably the worst when it comes to sticking to goals, unfortunately. And it is because of what we've already been kind of talking about. Either I haven't set those realistic expectations for myself, but more so than anything, it becomes out of sight, out of mind. So being able to come back and revisiting and giving yourself some grace, you might go into this with an idea that you're going to be able to set X amount aside. And like we said, something can come up, and it doesn't mean that it's a bust on the goal. It's just give yourself that grace to say, okay, this month didn't to go that way. What do I need to do? But that's why it's so important to revisit those on a semi-regular basis, just to give yourself that better insight into what's going on in your finances. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
I think
cool.
even talking about it with others, I mean, now all of you who are listening to this podcast can hold me accountable to my goals. So, yeah, just talking about our goals and finding an accountability partner. Maybe that's a spouse, maybe that's your family, especially if you have a family who all needs to work together to achieve a goal. Maybe it's even just to set aside a specific amount for a family vacation. If you can
Yeah.
get buy-in from everyone in the family and share, hey, this is our goal, this is the amount, it can be much easier to then say no to going through to the drive-through or making small impulse purchases throughout the year, if you or throughout the month or however long your kind of goal period is, if you all just know what that target is and everyone's bought into it who might impact the ability to achieve that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was just thinking about this, and I'm trying to remember if this was on one of our early podcast episodes. If any longtime listeners are still tuning in and remember this, mention it in the comments. But um, I remember us talking once about, financial goals as well, and almost creating, I know this might sound crazy, but for the creatives out there, they're going to love it, but create a mood board. Create a mood board of what you're thinking the financial reality is of your life, right? And making it visual, because I remember this as a kid. I wanted a Corvette really, really bad. I don't own a Corvette, so the story doesn't end happy. But I remember having that
There's
up
still
on.
time. You still need to
There's
set
still
your
time.
2026 financial goals. So
That's right.
maybe you
I
got
think I
it.
got older and realized that they're not as practical of a vehicle as I was thinking they were at 12. But I remember I had a picture of a Corvette, the one that I wanted, and it made me realize I didn't spend as much money because I wanted to get to that one point. And I want to own that car. I want to own that car. So when you kind of already know and you can name the thing that you really want,
Mhm.
becomes easier to say no to the things that sometimes are calling our attention or our stomachs for a quick, fast food run. I know I can be
Yeah.
guilty of that. And so it does help you to in your own brain to kind of say, no, I have something bigger that I'm saving for, and I can say no to that with more, discipline, if you will. I think that's, again, the mood board kind of just starts to help people visualize, like, oh yeah, this is the type of car that I want, or this is the type of computer that I want, or
Yeah.
these are the type of things that I want to do. Maybe it's a vacation. It could even be, you mentioned about families kind of coming together to pool their money for a family vacation.
Mhm.
I've even heard some really cool touching stories around this season, coming out of the holiday season, where families set a goal to together donate a large sum to a charity. And it's just a really cool way for families and friends to kind of just work together towards a common goal.
Yeah.
So there's just so many different things that I think for our listeners, that this opens the possibilities, those doors to being able to accomplish all of those things. So that's
Yeah,
that's
and
really
I
cool.
wanted to jump on what you talked about with having the physical picture of the Corvette. I think with a lot of our financial goals, it's not necessarily like a physical item that we're
Right.
purchasing or that we're working towards, but it can be a feeling. It can be, so like for me with that emergency fund, I know that there will be a peace of mind that
Yeah,
comes with having that fully funded emergency fund, knowing that if my car breaks down, if I have a major expense, I don't have to worry about putting that on a credit card. I have what it takes, what it's going to take to pay that. Or if I have a home
yeah,
repair, like any of those things are
for
going to
sure.
be less stressful if I've already prepared for them in advance. And so I think just a reduction in stress or any
Yeah,
other feeling like that that could be that motivator. And so
for
I guess
sure.
just coming up with a creative way of how do you remind yourself of what's going to come once you achieve that goal. If you're paying off debt again, that's going to be a similar feeling. You're going to
For
feel
sure.
a whole lot less stressed and have money then to funnel once you pay off specific debts. That same money that was
Oh
going
yeah.
towards those debt payments can go towards another goal that you have and can be used for other purposes. So, just that peace of mind that comes with achieving a lot of the financial goals that we might have is just, again, so
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, Savannah, as we're kind of closing out, I want to just, touch on a couple last few things. I think one of the things you mentioned was involving other people. I think
Mhm.
about sticking to a goal or, something of that nature. A lot of times it's helpful to have someone that also is aware of your goal, who can be either that cheerleader or, accountability coach, if you will, whether your finances are, a spouse in yourself or not. How can leveraging some friends or family and invite them in on at least what your goal is, how can that lead to greater success as well?
Yeah, I think just this understanding that you're not alone in it and you have
Mm,
somebody else who's going to encourage and support and hold you accountable is just so incredibly important. And also, I think the more that we talk about our finances, and again, whoever you share your financial goal with, you don't have to be 100%. Um, I guess, transparent about all of the details. You don't have to
right.
include specific numbers because that's personal and you might be comfortable with sharing it, you might not be. But
Yeah.
just having somebody who you can talk to about that goal and maybe even bounce maybe your friend is also setting a financial goal
Yeah.
and you
It's a
can
great point.
check in, but then also encourage each other. And also, a lot of times, our financial goals involve spending less. So, if it's somebody who you're spending a lot of time with, can you together find other cheaper things or free things to do to spend time together? Is it maybe your financial goal accountability partner is somebody that you often will go to lunch with? Could you pack a lunch and do a picnic instead, or something that you're doing together that's going to make a dent in whatever that financial goal is, even if one person's goal is paying off a credit card debt and the other person's goal is saving for a down payment for a home. How could both of those goals, how could you take steps to achieve them together?
For sure, for sure. And I think those are the situations that when you do have some people that are at least in the journey with you as well a little bit. Again, I love what you said. It doesn't have to be all the details, but some of it. I think that's where it's helpful when you come to March and April, and a couple months have gone by now of the new year, and I was like, this is starting to get like not fun having to do all this budgeting and stuff. I think when you have people in your corner, that's what helps keep the momentum going too. When you start to lose steam, which I think naturally everybody will sort of lose steam, and that's why re-engaging with your budget, re-engaging with even the assessment, re-engaging with friends and family just helps to, I think, bring you back to where you were at the start of the year and keep
Yeah.
that momentum throughout the rest.
And using the financial health check as a first, it's a baseline, it's figuring out where you're at. But then throughout the year, as you work on that goal, or let's say you've even hit that first goal and you've set a second goal, being able to retake that and just visibly see your score going up, I think is another
Yeah,
really powerful motivator. Even if your score in one area just goes up by a couple points, that's still huge progress. And so using the people in your life, but then also using tools like the financial wellness
yeah.
assessment to just check in and continue to be used as a tool to recognize your progress and motivate yourself for future progress as well.
Well, I want to shout out again one more time for listeners that, our financial wellness tools that we have on our website, and we're talking about budgeting and setting goals. Obviously, the assessment is a big part of being able to understand where you need to set goals for. But you
Mhm.
might be like, man, I got to start with just understanding my own budget, right? And so there are great tools in there as well for all of that. So highly encourage everybody, if you haven't already, go check out those resources and sign up for that. And you'll be able to track again, like you said, Savannah, tracking your information. It is, I think, a really useful, powerful tool for people to get connected with. And it's free.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the big thing, right? In a world where nothing seems to be free anymore, we absolutely want to meet people where they're at, and there's no reason to charge anything for that. So, can you share, just as we're about to wrap up, a little bit more about these incredible tools?
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to support you in reaching your financial goals. We're here to help all of our members achieve dreams for a lifetime. And achieving your financial goals is how you do that, how you achieve your dreams. And so we have, like Brett mentioned, we have incredible resources on the LMCU Financial Wellness Center. There's a bunch of educational resources, but then also tools like this financial wellness assessment that can help you in reaching your financial goals. We also have amazing products and services. So if you are, let's say, looking to increase your score in borrowing and your debt load feels unmanageable right now and you're focused on paying that off, maybe the first step is consolidating that debt.
Yeah.
We have products to support you with that. Or maybe you're looking to save more. We have our max checking account where you can earn interest on the buffer that you're keeping in your checking account. We have money market accounts where you can earn interest on balances. We have CDs that you can lock funds for a set amount of time and earn great interest on those balances as well. So, yeah, I would just encourage you to really explore what's going to support you in reaching that goal, and we are here to help.
I love that. Absolutely. And we've had some great episodes in the past too, for those that are tuning in, that, you want to learn more about what a HELOC does, a home equity line of credit, or a CD. These products can do some incredible things when it's trying to save and build up some of that savings, get you maybe on your goals a little bit faster. So really, really exciting, and a lot of really great things to hopefully, for all of you at home listening and tuning in. Again, this is that time of the year as you're preparing your finances to start 2026
Mhm.
strong, and continue to leverage that throughout the rest of the year until the end. So, truly, always pleasure to have you on the show, Savannah. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and again, we are so grateful for what you're doing for not only our members, but for, again, our community, and how they can leverage these tools for their everyday needs. So we appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, a huge shout out again to Savannah and her whole team and the incredible work they're doing. Let us know in the comments what goals you plan to make this year. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date on future episodes on YouTube. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.